Thank you. Let me get set up here.
Press it. There you go.
Okay, am I good? Everybody can hear me? Thank you so much for the warm welcome. And to you, sir, Mark, thank you so much for having me here at the Tryst. What a fantastic venue this is, isn't it? And it just feels so refreshing to be in Johannesburg, and it feels so refreshing to be with human beings again. So well done to you for making it possible for us. So thank you.
Absolutely. And I get really excited when we get to host these types of events again because they were taken away from us for so long. And I think that the story that has unfolded in your life is unique. But before we get in there, I want to simply ask this question. For people who don't know who Nick Dreyer is, who the fuck is Nick Dreyer, and what is the value that Nick adds to this world?
Well, yeah, great question. So it's always who, what, where, and why, right? So the who in me is Nick Dreyer. I'm 40-ish years old, father of two, expecting one, and from Cape Town. Studied in Pretoria at Pretoria Boys High, and some of my mates are here today, yeah. So just a family guy. My history is I worked for a guy called Paul Harris, who was the founder of a bank. And I did a bunch of stuff for him for a while. I was 36 years old. I was very, very close to Paul in the entrepreneurial space and the business space. But then my father died at the age of 36, and I decided if it was such a cataclysmic event in my life, I figured if I wasn't going to change whatever I wanted to do with myself at that moment, then I probably wouldn't end up taking a chance. So I then ended up joining the business world at the age of 36, and as you and I have had many laughs, bottomed out very quickly. So yeah, that's me. That is the sort of Nick Dreyer that precedes Veldskoen.
Before we talk about the success, let's talk about the bottoming out.
Yeah.
Because often we celebrate our victories, but not our losses.
Yeah.
Tell me a little bit about the loss or seven that you experienced before Veldskoen.
Yeah, cool. So in business, I resigned, and I had this big job. I was the alternate director to a bunch of businesses, and I was traveling all over the world. And I had this remarkable lifestyle. I call it the fake empire. And so I resigned. I had about 8 months worth of income for that current lifestyle that I and my wife were enjoying. And I remember my wedding day was 4 months after I'd resigned, and my father-in-law said by his best guess, his wife is married to a soon-to-be homeless guy. And because I'd started an art advisory business, which was in the business of advising people what luxury art or assets to buy and how to move them across the world. I'd got some experience in it, so I started my own business called Oriti, and I was at it for about 8 months when I had to give it up because unlike failing, it had failed to begin. I couldn't raise one invoice, so I was long on advice and short on income, and which was the first lesson: always be raising an invoice, right? So I then moved into the exhibitions business with a mate, and we did really cool stuff. We brought really big exhibitions to South Africa, the world's biggest Lego exhibition. We brought out Titanic, and then in one day we changed we changed the secretary of Nene was fired, and the dollar went from $11 a dollar to $17 a dollar, and we were out of business, and we dug ourselves an 8 million rand debt hole in the space of 9 months. And it was at that moment, at the bottom of the hole, where my very mediocre builder mate, Ross Zondagh, at the time, making his own special little hole, where we got together, where this conversation started.
So run me through this, because to go from art to exhibitions to Veldskoen, I'm not seeing the link.
It's an interesting one because, okay, so I'll tell you the story about how this car journey happens. But just for context, Ross and myself went to school together. We met when we were in standard 6. He's English, I'm English. We don't have any Afrikaans background. At this point, neither of us had ever bought anything online. And to be honest, I'd never even seen a pair of Veldskoen. let alone worn a pair of Veldskoen. So the likelihood of us doing this is so remote, just from a pure product category perspective.
Yes.
But the story goes, I was in Plettenberg Bay driving to Cape Town. I'd visited my mother there, and Ross was driving around Cape Town, and the story happened in 6 hours. And in 6 hours, in the first hour, I phoned him up and I said to him, mate, I don't know if you've got time, but I'm going to be driving, and could we just talk a bit of shit on the phone? And he's like, yeah, cool. And the first thing we started speaking about was how disappointed we were that the South African team looked so poor at the Olympics in Rio. They were wearing these sort of nondescript tracksuits, ill-fitting, and we were immediately, as we often do, into a debate, quasi-fight, some might say, but about what they could have been wearing. And the argument wasn't about what they should have been wearing, it was like, what is the one thing that every South African knows as a piece of apparel? And that was actually the argument, right? And Ross said maybe a Madiba shirt. And I was like, yeah, okay, maybe, but I've never seen a lot of people wearing Madiba shirts. It's iconic because Madiba wears a Madiba shirt.
Yes.
And we went through a bunch of options, and there are very few items of apparel that are uniquely South African. And we said, yeah, one of them is a Veldskoen. And one of us said, yeah, but Veldskoens are terrible because they're sort of like these boring brown things. And I said to him, but maybe it didn't have to be that, because I'd just gotten back from traveling in New York, and I'd bought a pair of shoes that they'd collaborated between an Oxford brogue and Nike, and they had an Oxford brogue with a bright yellow sole. And I had this kid working for me at the time, and I phoned him up and I said to him, do me a favor, Photoshop yellow soles and laces onto a pair of Veldskoen off the internet. And he goes, cool, do you just want yellow? So I said, well, what other colors do you want? And he goes, I'll do the colors of the South African flag. So I was like, okay, cool. And he sent them back 10 minutes later on my phone, and we got the WhatsApp images, and the photo stayed the same, the shoe stayed the same, but the colors changed, and bang. In that moment, it was as if a lightning bolt had gone off, not just in my car, but in Ross's car. That was in hour number 3. By the time I arrived back in Cape Town, Veldskoen Pty Limited, the business was registered with SIPSI, and we'd put in the application to trademark Veldskoen because nobody had ever done it.
No one ever trademarked Veldskoen.
Nobody had done it. And in that 6 hours, we had decided to do it. Now, the great thing is, of course, we didn't know how to make shoes. We didn't know how to sell anything online. We didn't know how to do marketing. We didn't know how to use Facebook. And we had no idea how to do a fashion and apparel business. And that's where the true hustle started. I had my thing, he had his thing, and we did it at night. But guys, just so you know, Zoom, I've been doing Zoom for 7 years. Because we were working remotely and we were hiding it from our wives. Because they were so sick of us, like failing. And my wife is English, by the way, bless her. And I told her that I was starting a Veldskoen business, and she asked me what a Veldskoen does, which... So we hid it from them. We hid this concept from them, but we knew we were onto something. But what was interesting is a little bit like you you had a really good idea. You wanted to execute it digitally. We did the same thing. We didn't want to, and we had no money to buy shoes. And we weren't sure if this would work. So we actually built an entirely fake or digital version of Veldskoen's business. So Veldskoen.shoes was the first URL. And we built a Facebook page, and we launched it as if it was real. And we launched it in 1 week. Our first tagline was, "The legend is back." And people went nuts for it, thinking we were this like 400-year-old business. And the next thing, we started to sell shoes in e-commerce, and we sold 200 pairs of shoes, and they were the same Photoshop shoes. And we still hadn't made them. And so we had to phone everyone and apologize. And so we phoned everybody one by one and said, this is what we've done, but we think we're onto something. Are you going to stick it out with us because we're going to get your shoes at some point, or do you want your money back? And the answer was, to a person, thank you for telling me, and we'll stick with you,
Wow.
and we wish you the best of luck. And that is literally how Veldskoen started. 6 months later, we took delivery of our first shoes. And by the way, I'm still trying to figure out how to do a shoe business.
Yeah, well, we started tonight with suits and Veldskoen, so we renamed it specifically for tonight. We're winning. I mean, I think I want to delve exactly into that, if we can, because I have a little bit of experience, slightly more than you did in the beginning, of trying to get a sneaker brand moving. What was this process? So you've sold 200 pairs. Where do you go? What do you do? Because I've started lots of businesses, and there's a certain high that comes with when you get going.
Yeah.
But now 6 months is a long time.
Yeah.
So run me through just the highlights package of the 6 months, because you're all excited. You've sold 200 pairs. Let's go. But it took 6 months.
Yeah.
Some highlights packages in terms of the ups and downs of getting this thing. Who do you even go to get this?
I'll give you the first 9 months. And I'm just going to preface the first 9 months by saying only in the last 3 months had we taken investment. So in the first 6 months, we're bootstrapping, literally bootstrapping. And we're in a 2x2 meter office in Woodstock. Me and Ross and a guy called Hanu, who's a designer. We knew we needed a designer. And we just go digital. But because we were starting to sell shoes, we started to get interest from South Africans all over the world. And we knew that if we could get to London, we could build Veldskoen in the UK. Because we just built it in South Africa. And remember, this was all new to us. It was the first time we'd done it. And weirdly, we were the first true e-com only footwear brand in South Africa. So we had no trepidation or nervousness about doing a foreign business. So we literally got onto a plane, booked an Airbnb, built out the UK, veldskoen.co.uk, which is 6 months younger than South Africa's business, flew back, and started selling shoes in the UK. And so, because we were naive as you could be, so we do this, and from a brand perspective, it's growing, and it's getting a good following, and we're selling maybe 150, 200 pairs of shoes a month at this point. And I'm in London for a second trip there because we had to take shoes, and in those days, we couldn't afford to send containers, so we would fly on Emirates with 70 kilograms worth of luggage each, which just had shoes on, and we would unpack the boxes in London. That's how we built the business, literally selling shoes, delivering them out of hotel rooms. And so we built it, and I was there the second time, and I get a phone call from a guy called Chris Smith, and he goes, "Nick, I'm the editor of the Sunday Times newspaper." And I'm like, "That's great, how can I help you?" And he says, "I was at a party last night, and I saw Prince Harry, wearing a pair of," and he told me, "Pinotage Veldskoen." And I said to him, "Have you got a picture?" And he goes, "That's why I'm phoning you." And he says, "Tell me about this brand." And I said to him, I told him the story, and I said, "It's the precursor to the desert boot," which it is. And I said, "I don't know how Harry got hold of it, but it's our shoes." And he says, "I'm going to write an article in the newspaper." And the first Sunday, he wrote an article about the concept of what a Veldskoen is, the history of potentially the oldest shoe in the world, if you think about the koi, and it actually predates Syrian footwear. And so he writes the article, and it's like, okay, cool. And the article comes out, and nothing really happens. And remember, we're selling about 150, 200 pairs of shoes a month at this point. The second Sunday comes out, and my phone goes nuts. Shopify just goes bang, bang, bang. I think we sold 600 pairs of shoes in the day in London. And it was because he put in a piece, I think it was 30 words, and a photo of Harry saying, "Prince Harry's a fan of Veldskoen." And that was it. That is it. But we were smart, because what we did is that we put out a press release in South Africa saying, "The Times of London has published a piece about Veldskoen." Oh. And so we made the front page of Business Day. And so South Africa all of a sudden had this massive press moment, and all of a sudden we were completely validated from a press moment. So the UK was the first, Prince Harry was really the very first one. And then the second one, which is a crazy story in itself, but we went into the US. At this point, we've got a listed company as a partner, and we go out there because our suitors, some folks wanted to invest in our business called Fun Brands, and we go out there, and they tell us they want to make the investment, but they've got partners that have seen the product, and they're really keen on coming to join the investment. So part of their due diligence, they had to reveal who they're thinking. And so I said, okay, cool, who are your partners? And they go, Ashton Kutcher and Mark Cuban. And they'd like to join the investment. So we're like, okay, it's not a tough one. Struck a deal, and the next piece of news that came out globally was that Ashton Kutcher, who, as you know, is a massive tech investor, as well as Mark Cuban, had taken a position on a South African footwear brand. And the next thing, Ashton is wearing the shoes at a Mavs game, NBA, famous picture next to his wife Mila, and global news goes nuts about a new footwear brand that Ashton Kutcher has invested in. And so those two moments, they're sort of influencer-based, but had nothing to do with us, like completely non-engineered. But the reason they both worked wasn't because we'd started a brand and that because we'd called it something cool. The reason they both worked is because we had about 300 years of brand equity baked into our story. There was this history that mattered. Harry didn't wear our shoes because he thought they were cool. Harry wore the shoes because they're part of the African diaspora globally, and has been for 300 years. So there's this element of influence of the world, but mostly about the authenticity and the quality of the product and what it stood for in South Africa that gave it that massive inherited base off which it could work. So from a branding and marketing perspective, that was the thing that pushed it hard.
So how many of you know that origin story as a matter of interest? I mean, it's quite remarkable, and that's sitting not only in this room, but in the country. So I wonder how much of this, do you feel that this brand was bestowed specifically upon you? Were you lucky? Was it just pure timing? How do you think it gets to, I'm still blown away that no one had ever trademarked Veldskoen up until that point. How do you feel? Like, how do you think about it? Because when you go to bed, like, it's got to play in your head a little bit, right? So you think like, part of this was just great timing, a little bit of luck, what have you, with Prince Harry and Ashton. But now you've got it, and I think the magic of why I was so intrigued by your story is because I feel, but it's easy for me to say, you're the right fit for this brand. Because we're going to get into the wine a little bit, but it is that for me. It's that here's a guy and his partner who actually want to use this brand for really cool shits. But how do you feel about it when you go to bed at night?
Yeah, so we call ourselves so we realized early that we'd gotten very lucky. Okay, but we didn't feel that luck from a business magnificence perspective, and there's literally a self-deprecating influence in our business, but it's not because we're trying to be humble, it's because we literally don't know what we're doing. Okay, so that's not just to, I'm not, there is no genius in Veldskoen. There's just hard work and endeavor, but what we realized very, very early is that South Africa loved the brand. Okay. And we felt early a responsibility to celebrate South Africa in the brand. Remember, this is now 2016-17, and I often say, there's these huge rooms that we all know about with lots of people saying everything that's bad about South Africa, and they're entitled to do that, and the media can do it, and I could list all the challenges in South Africa. I'm not a denialist, but we felt there was an opportunity to say positive things about South Africa, and that could potentially positively influence a brand and then influence our journey. And we knew that if we were positive about South Africa, authentically, and that we tried to participate meaningfully in the South African brand story and try and use this opportunity, that something very special would happen with the brand. And from the day that we started to realize that, we stopped referring to ourselves as the brand owners or the company owners, and we talk about being custodians.
Love it.
And we feel very strongly that we are the custodians of something that is far bigger than Nick and Ross and the team, and it's more about us doing the best for it, and for it to have a positive influence than it is for us to self-enrich ourselves by merely selling more shoes. So we've looked for opportunities throughout our journey to meaningfully participate in the South African story and meaningfully focus specifically on the ability of South Africans to make and build really amazing businesses. because we forget we're in one of the greatest places of opportunity in the world. Where do you see businesses like Sweep South starting in England? Or where can two idiots start a fashion brand that's now in 32 countries globally? South Africa is a very special place. And we have very talented people, and we've got really good business ideas, but we've got opportunity. And so we feel the business model of Veldskoen is actually to try and elevate that and to facilitate it. So to answer your question, when I go to bed at night, it doesn't really feel like a business, it feels like a purpose. And so we try to make sure that we do the right thing by the brand versus the best business decisions often.
I love that, Nick. But let's go the other way.
Yeah.
Because anybody who's run a business knows that it's that iceberg meme. You see the top part of what works, and people don't see the behind the scenes.
Yeah.
And even if you are the custodians of this brand, there's about 1,000,004 things that you would have to do to get this right, and there's about 7 more million things on top of that would have gone against you, or a whole bunch of lessons that you had to learn.
Yeah.
So I want to kind of dig into the other side. I want to hear about the journey from the perspective of the struggles.
Yeah.
Because again, you and I have had a bit of a chat off air, so I have a bit of context. But I know even from my own experience that even this is nothing like a Veldskoen, but even getting to this point for us has taken years of my life.
Yeah.
Tell me about the parts that took years of yours.
People ask me a lot, should I become an entrepreneur? And my answer is, if you're happy with working more hours than anyone, not having any balance, being unhealthy, putting your relationships under strain. If you're happy with all of those things, then yes, you should be an entrepreneur, because that's the price. That's the price one pays, but the reward is substantial from a life perspective, right? Because it's not just about yourself. It's not just about your business. It's not making a buck, which we all want to do. Don't get me wrong. I'm a capitalist, but you get to experience different things. You get to experience other people's families benefiting from your endeavor.
Yes.
You get to see what it means to take a business from 10 people to 200 people to 500 people, and that impact that it can have on a community, and then you impact other people's businesses. But the struggle isn't real, it's severe. It's easily the toughest thing that you could choose to do. The challenges in Veldskoen are very, very predictably the same as other startups. Funding early, huge issue in funding, and then figuring out later that the way you raised it was potentially dangerous or even predatory to a degree. And then learning that scale comes at the cost of potentially equity, and that might not be a good idea because it doesn't take long for you to no longer be a shareholder. And so you've got to take really tough decisions along the way, and Veldskoen has experienced all of them. And then, of course, you mentioned the iceberg, Feb 2020, and retail is off, and we have no rands coming into a business that requires income to survive. And you're 3 years old, so your runway is maybe 4 months at the most. And so it's in those moments, and in that moment, COVID specifically, the lockdown, where the entire business model changed. The whole thing became a completely different animal. I told you I was staying in a house in Observatory that I'd rented because we were moving to London in March. That's because Veldskoen's headquarters would have been in England. To this day now, headquartered in Cape Town, we'll never move to London because the entire business model has changed. It simply evaporated that entire plan. But the challenges are severe. The advice is you have to work harder than you've ever thought you have to, and it's treacherous. You've got to enjoy risk.
There is no question.
Nobody enjoys risk, but you know what I mean. You've got to be able to deal with risk.
An appetite for it.
Yeah.
There's a saying that I love, entrepreneurship isn't for everybody, but everybody should try once. It's a really good example, because I think the skills that you learn through entrepreneurship are definitely transferable to many other aspects of your life. But I do agree, like if you've got a good thing going and you're working for someone, I just don't think it always makes sense.
Yeah.
Give me some examples of, so like you've spoken about COVID, and I think it's an obvious one.
Yeah.
It's no less important. I know that in business, it always takes longer than you think, even when it's going well.
Yeah.
It takes longer than you think. So I'd love to just like get into some nitty gritty, and then I want to shift to why, Nick.
Yeah.
But give me some like classical, tangible examples of those real challenges outside of COVID.
Retail, that's the easiest one to talk about. So, you're a shoe business, right? So we're online, selling into a couple of shops, but like independent one-store places. And then Woolworths comes, and they say, we'd like to list you at Woolworths, and bless him, Michael Coles is not there. He's not at Woolworths anymore. But he got it. He was like, we need to support local brands. And we want to put Veldskoen, a local brand, into Woolworths. And you're going, yeah, that's the best thing I've ever heard in my life. And then they say, you've got to pick and pack everything yourself and label it yourself. So in other words, put a Woolworths tag on it. Now, our stuff's made in Durban. It arrives at the factory. And so we get this order, and we're super pumped about it. And we realized that with the resources that we had, it would take 8 months to get it done. And so you're immediately going like this is never going to work, man. And then and then you're sort of, your whole business model goes out the window, because you're going, but I thought that retail was the answer, and I've got no idea how to do this. And so you then just reset and you try to figure it out. So not only does business take far longer than you expect it to do, but in the case of Veldskoen, and I love using this thing, we've had huge moments in the business, right? So we've had Ashton Kutcher, we've had Harry, we sponsored the Olympic team, which we'll get onto later, and the entire country hears about us, right? And everybody's like, oh my God, we saw the Olympics, you must have sold 1 million shoes that weekend. And it simply never happens. What happens is you have a bip. So like on the day, you'd normally sell 50 pairs of shoes, but now you sell 65 pairs of shoes. And then you have to wait. Because what happens is that news filters slowly through the entire buying audience. And then over 4 months, slowly the base moves half a degree up. And then you're like, that worked. Do you know what I mean? But there's no silver bullet. And, even we go through this every year with Black Friday and all the rest of it, and you go, guys, we've got the perfect Facebook ad. We're going to spend 100 grand, and somehow, magically, it's going to turn into 200,000 rand. And just simply doesn't happen. There's no money tree. There's no silver bullet in business.
Yeah.
Or let's say there is. I haven't seen it. It takes long, and it never, ever goes exactly as you've planned it to go.
Yeah, because I think, in a way, if you think about how the schooling system works, you work on this conveyor belt. You move from grade 1 to grade 2 to everything's kind of laid out for you. But in entrepreneurship and business, there is no paint-by-number system that you follow, so you have to figure it out on the fly.
Yeah.
And that's difficult enough. And then you have to hopefully instill all these measurements to work out, to manage your measurement, and then you might have missed the boat.
Yeah.
So you have to have this extreme ability to endure pain.
It's a very, very good point. It's not just pain, but you have to be able to endure extreme pain, but you have to be able to endure pain for a long period of time. That's the one that gets you down. That's the one where you throw in the towel, where you go, can I just have a bull market in South Africa? Can I just have an interest rate? Can I just have a dollar-rand exchange that makes a bit of sense? Can I just have, and you've been at it for 6, 7, 8 months, 9 months, and your rent's going up and your fuel bills are going up, and you're going, come on, like, I've got every single obstacle ahead of me. If you can't endure, that's when you throw in the towel.
Yeah.
And so just knowing that that's part of it, and I think that's also where it becomes critical to reach out to other entrepreneurs.
Absolutely.
Because there's not an entrepreneur or a business owner that's going to say to you, I think it's a good idea for you to quit because you've been at it for 3 months and it's not working. So you've got to be longer.
So let's flip exactly to that why.
Yeah.
I've had to learn this lesson myself many times. People don't buy what you do, they buy why you do it.
Yeah.
There is a magic that surrounds Veldskoen, there's no question. First, I experienced it from the proper outside, not knowing you, but hearing people speak about it. I remember that iconic picture of Ashton wearing it in the Mavs game. But then as I've gotten to know you a little bit more in the last few months, and we've chatted behind the scenes, I've got a lot of behind the scenes views on where. And I think we would be remiss to then not explain to the audience genuinely. And I think you can get Nick off the bat. You can see, no bullshit, talk straight, on point. Why do you do what you do? What is the why? I don't mean to Simon Sinek it, but what drives you in this capacity?
And it was triggered. The big thing in Veldskoen is the trademark. You asked the question, how did it not happen? And it feels like such a unique thing to have happened. Now, I just want to explain the trademark as it comes to because it informs the why. It really does. The trademark in South Africa, we have this trademark called Veldskoen, the Soul of South Africa. It's the brand and the PTY Limited and all the rest of it. And we've got a design patent protecting the flag and the soles and the lace, etc. So it's like tight. In the States, our trademark is run by a company called Nobby Martins. Nobby Martins runs the IP for Nike. So you can imagine from an IP protective perspective, we're gold. But we made a very conscious decision when we started the business that, and I think this has been the basis of which we've worked, is that we would never, ever enforce our trademark in South Africa because it's undeserving and it's not right. We didn't invent Veldskoen. We captured it in a way that we gave us an opportunity to create opportunity for others. So we made the decision never to do it. And what we've done is done the extreme. We've actually encouraged people to start Veldskoen companies. And you won't believe it, there's 2 very prominent Veldskoen companies in South Africa today that have started in our offices rent-free. And we did it because we're trying to make the pizza bigger. That's what we're trying to do. We're trying to make the pizza bigger. So now I think there's 12 or 15 odd Veldskoen companies in South Africa. Jared over there, one of his customers is in Gauteng. I think they carry all 8 companies worth of Veldskoen. It's an amazing business. They're called Philly Boutique. I don't think Philly Boutique, without us, would be as big as they are today. And they don't just sell our product. So the case is to make the pizza bigger. But, and this is where we do get a bit of competitive, and I'm going to flick back to the why now. If you make a pair of Veldskoen in England or in America, and you call it a Veldskoen, then we'll protect it.
Absolutely.
Okay, so that's a non-negotiable. And the other non-negotiable is if you in South Africa want to call a shoe a Veldskoen and you import it from the East, then we'll attack. Because the idea is to make the products here. And that informs our why. Our why is this place, South Africa, building a better South Africa. And the only thing that we have in my control is the driver for our business, why people buy our shoe, is because there's in all of us an innate love for our country. We can get agitated and slightly pissed off at times, etc. But there's that great analogy that Australian people are always slightly above average in their mental state. Always slightly happy. But what we are is completely bipolar. We're ecstatic or fucking miserable. And we flow between them. But they never get to be ecstatic. And there's a thing about South Africans. You know, there's a guy that sings in the show, Hamilton. I interviewed him a while back. Do you know, he told me a funny thing. He says when he comes out off stage and they gather outside the theater to meet fans, he says to a person, he says it never happens. He says he can always stand on a little platform, look at the 700 people that have come to appreciate the actors, and he'll go, those are the 4 South Africans. He hasn't heard them speak. It's a sense. Now we call that, in our business, South Africanness. This slightly undefined, weird thing that just connects us just by the fact that we're all here. It doesn't matter if you're from Polokwane, it doesn't matter if you're 12, it doesn't matter if you're 80. It doesn't matter. We've got this something in us. And that thing is what is driving people's want to buy our product, because it represents hope, and it represents endeavor in a tough place. And we don't mask it. We're not bullshitting about it. We're not denialists. But the shoe, and the custodianship is important here. The shoe has become something that connects us. It connects us as people, and it connects us to the possibility that South Africa can, should, and must be one of the greatest places in the world. And it's driven by people. And to that why, don't buy my Veldskoen, but buy a Veldskoen from South Africa, because that's the point. Come to the tryst, buy from me and B, buy a pair of Grenadilla swim trunks. But we have so much cool shit here, we must just embrace it. And if anybody doesn't know what you want to buy or what you want to participate in or learn, etc., these are the sort of platforms that people need to dial into. So if you want to share anything on the internet or on social media, share the sort of stuff that encourages South Africans to support other South Africans. That is our why.
I want to come squarely back to that, but I want to just quickly ask about the Olympics.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not every day people start a fashion brand that gets to the Olympics.
Yeah.
How did that come about? And I'm going to circle back to the why.
Sure. The Olympics is the coolest story in the world because it was so unbelievably long shot-ish, right? Who knows how to get to the Olympics? Put your hands up if you know how to get your stuff into the Olympics. I mean, who knows how to do that, right? We were trying to figure out how to do this, and the concept was, why don't we just ask South Africa? Ask for help. As entrepreneurs and as business owners, we profess this. We say to each other, ask for help. Just say, I need help. So I looked into the camera and it was filmed, and I said, South Africa, do me a favor. Our dream is to get our shoes on the Olympics. You might not know this, but this is how the whole thing started. If you know anybody at the Olympics that can help us, please send us some advice. And my phone rings the next day. It's absolutely true to God's story. And it's Ravi Govender, and he's the CEO of Saskok. And he goes, hi, Nick. I hear that you're looking for me. And what's cool about this story is that, so they identified that we were a small business, and he asked me what we wanted to do, and I told him the whole story, and he goes, this could be the start of the Olympics story supporting small businesses in South Africa. And I was over the moon, and he said, okay, cool, what can you do? And I said, I can sponsor the Olympic team with shoes. So that's what we had. We had no cash, we had just had shoes. And we were strong that we wanted to sponsor the able-bodied and the disabled-bodied athletes. So we then commit to the shoes, right? Like a bunch of shoes. And this is now going ahead. And about 4 months, then the Olympics gets delayed. We're super excited, but we're still kind of, will this happen? Because the Olympics was about to be cancelled. And then we wake up to the news that Mr. Price, the retail group, had bought the headline sponsorship for the South African Olympic team. And this news was a hammer blow because you couldn't reasonably expect for them not to dress the Olympians, okay? And I phoned Ravi, and he said, just leave it with me. And in South Africa, for very good reason, we are critical of a lot of our governmental institutions. But I'll tell you, Saskok did an amazing thing. They fought for our business in the face of a very large sponsored retailer. And they were strong that if they were going to do the deal with Mr. Price, that the deal that they'd made with us had to be upheld, and that Mr. Price would have to work with us so that our shoes could be on the athletes. And another great piece of the story is Mr. Price, big retailer with buy rights, should never have entertained it, agreed that it was the right thing to do. And so you had this wonderful story about government and big business working together and giving us the opportunity to put the shoes on the athletes. And then they got some young designers. And then I was hoping to go to Japan, but of course that was physically impossible with COVID. But I promise you, just watching it, we got our team together in our offices. And I mean, it makes me emotional speaking about it now. And we had 2 televisions up, and we still didn't believe that they would do it. I just couldn't believe that it was going to happen. And we were just all sitting there, and Ross and I just burst into tears. Out came Chad Leclerc with a flag, and bang, there they were. Yellow soul, green soul, blue soul, and we were just like, doesn't that feel like it should have been in Rio? And that was the full story coming to a completion. And for the first time, I think in South Africa's lovely history, our champions walked out feeling like South Africans. And that made us very proud. Yeah.
Yeah, I love it. I mean, I think everybody loves that, and it's kind of coming back to the why. What are some of the disastrous mistakes that you've made? And when I say mistakes, obviously you're not intending to make those mistakes, but you look back with hindsight and you're like, we fucked up solidly there. I'd love to know about 1 or 2.
So we love them, right? Because we've actually got a scorecard in our business for the costliest fuck-ups. and I am at the top. And weirdly, might have solved it today. So there's a couple of enormous ones. One, we've been banking in America, in the UK, for 5.5 years, okay? The cost of Forex trading on our UK business is exponentially big, okay? And we haven't been able to solve UK banking in 5.5 years. 5.5 years it's taken us for us to be able to open an HSBC bank account in the UK. So, and that was me in the beginning because we started trading, gung-ho, let's just switch on a Stripe account, and then immediately got locked in and couldn't get out of it. And it's taken me 5.5 years to get it right. The other one, I think I'm also in second place, is we ordered, oh no, wait, there he is over there. You might be in second place. Hey, Jared. Somebody made shoes, a lot of shoes, with embroidered logos on them. So we do huge amounts of business with small businesses where we partner with them and their teams, and you can put your company logo on our shoes. And we'll talk about that a little bit. But there was this new technology, laser engraving on shoes, which was pushed very heavily by my colleague, and he ordered an enormous amount of shoes, I think 700 or 800 pairs, like a sensational amount, and not one was usable. And so that's now still in the stockroom, waiting for a thing. But the big mistakes they're thankfully not existential. You know, they're the sort of thing you can work through. And the one thing I will say about our mistakes, and there's plenty, we've got a culture of embracing them because nobody that we know has done it before. So if you get it wrong once, learn from it, and then and move on.
You speak about this idea of your why and wanting to help foster the business sector in the country, especially small businesses. Yeah. Talk me through, because you've got this cool vehicle now, Veldskoen.
Yeah.
And of course we wanted to do well, you wanted to do well. But upon speaking to you a bunch of times in person, you were telling me about some of the other ventures that you had slowly but surely moved into in that space. Yeah. And I think we'd be amiss if we didn't just get into some of those. Like, you're not just doing Veldskoen, there's other things that you're doing on the side, the surfing side. These are like some cool projects that maybe people don't know about.
Yeah, so we started a flip-flop brand called Plucky at the same time as Veldskoen. It was actually on the same day, but it's taken 4 years to become something. And our flip-flop brand, like Veldskoen, is all made in South Africa, which is super fun. But what we do a lot of, and a lot of people don't know this, is that we partner and we collaborate an enormous amount with local businesses. And often it's just for just showcasing what they're doing. A great example right now is the NSRI, the National Sea Rescue Institute. They have a problem that there's a lot of places, specifically in Gauteng, where there's water sources and no lifeguards. So we have a lot of drownings in South Africa in places where there's no lifeguards. And so they've developed a pink life-saving buoy, which they put up at these water places, and they need to get funded. So we partnered with them as Plucky. We've got a decent sized audience, and we started selling these Pinkers for Boys Pluckies, which are cool. And for every 10 that we sell, we give all of the cash to them to put up a buoy. And those have actually saved lives. Can you believe it? Which is a hugely rewarding thing. But why that works, and I think this is the point of the question, is that what has a footwear business got to do working with a national sea rescue business institute? We try and find places where we can add value to each other. And in the case of the NSRI, Plucky immediately got a really big audience through the NSRI, and we started feeding back funds into the NSRI. We've done that quite successfully, and we've done it with very small businesses as well. I mentioned the embroidered shoes. We have so many offices that now have a Veldskoen Friday, or they have a charity drive. Let's say they do a CSI project, that they'll kit out all the staff with Veldskoen, and it becomes part of this improving South Africa and just having a South African identity. And we've done that hundreds and hundreds of times quite successfully. But the two that we're very, very passionate about, that we support wholeheartedly from a corporate social investment perspective is, and we're invested in it, actually invested in it, is African Grower, which is a food security technology, which has been embraced by the Mr. Price Foundation through their Handpick project, and they've rolled out these beautiful urban farms and created a full food security ecosystem. Where does Veldskoen get in? We've kit out the farmers. And so the farmers wear our shoes, and we use our audience to amplify the work that they do with the Mr. Price audience. And the great news about it is, because we're selling our shoes in 30-odd countries, I can get foreigners to potentially assist as well. So it's not just, us sitting in this room. I've got access to folks in Switzerland that want to support projects in Africa. And then the second one, which we're very strong on, is we've created a lovely mental health software platform called Are You OK? And it started with our team in COVID and trying to figure out what we could do for them, and then this built out, and we've ramped that up. And in fact, what we do with most projects, if we do a big business-to-business deal, is that we'll give free subscriptions to the mental health software as part of the purchase of the shoes. So there's, we try and do our bit, but it's what we pride ourselves on is finding other businesses to support and help, but as you say, to add value both ways. I think that's the best way to do it, as opposed to just a pure charitable, one direction giving, which is great, don't get me wrong, but we're finding more success building value.
So I guess my last question that I want to run through, and then we'll take some questions from you guys, is I want to just start gleaming through some of the takeaways, because we've got people sitting here, and whether or not they have their own business, I want to talk about some lessons learned, some of the how, some of the things that when they leave here tonight, they kind of walk away going, I didn't think about it like that, or I've heard that before, but not seen it in this perspective. So what is the advice that you would share with the audience, both here in person and the people watching this recorded, about some of the lessons you've learned that you think would be valuable to them?
This is why I've started speaking, is because every time I tell this Veldskoen story, there's somebody in the audience that wants to learn or is doing their own thing, whether that's a side hustle or wanting to start their own business. And I'm so keen on sharing the stories of Veldskoen because they're very applicable. But the reason why we want to impart on it, we recognize two things. The first thing is we need to start more businesses in South Africa. Whether that is a taste neighborhood cooking muffins for a Saturday, or whether it's starting a big business, if we're going to create more jobs in South Africa and lift ourselves out of the poverty cycle, we need to create more businesses. I'll give you, I heard the other day the mean average age for SIPC registration to start a business in South Africa is 52 years old. Can you get your head around that? We need 25-year-olds to start new businesses. And that leads you to the second thing. If you're going to get 25-year-olds to start new businesses, or everybody here to start a new business, you're going to have to learn the lessons of starting a business and being successful at business as quickly as you can, so that we can de-risk as many as possible. So the lessons learned by Nick Dreyer and Mark and everybody else that has failed We need to impart that knowledge as quickly as possible, and we need to make ourselves available for real-time, real-life, contactable coaching that doesn't impact our business, but we have to give our time. And that's why I started speaking, because people were saying to me, Nick, what are the lessons you've learned? What are the things that I should be thinking about when I want to start a business? And the very first one is, and I tell that story about the car journey for a very specific reason. Ross Zondagh is credited with this. There are 1,000 great ideas around a braai. There are 1,000 good ideas every weekend. This weekend there will be 200 great business ideas being discussed in the 400 square kilometers. You have to be willing to start. And people think that starting a business in South Africa is super onerous. It is. There's lots of onerous stuff about it. SIPSI is online. You can register a business online. You can get a business banking account quite quickly. You can talk to the likes of Sasfin at the beginning stages. They'll put you in touch with other companies. There is resource available. The trick is to start. Because the longer it takes you to start, the more time you're going to have to convince yourself not to do it. So that's just the first lesson. You have to kick it off. The second thing is, everybody's going to go, yeah, but I don't know how to do it. Guys, I still don't know how to do it. I simply don't know how to do it. The reality is, no one does. Otherwise, business would be safe. We don't know how to do it. That's the point of entrepreneurship. Your naivety is your superpower. If you knew how hard it was, you'd never do it. So accept that you don't have to know how to do it. Don't accept that it's going to happen by autopilot. You're not going to just stumble upon it like a successful business. You're going to have to work hard. But this guy put 100 hours into learning how to use cameras. It takes 100 hours to learn how to do anything in a business. So, you're going to have to get into it. But you don't have to necessarily have the skill sets to do what it is that you envisage doing. I can't believe I'm admitting this, but I think the first time I bought anything online was about 2 years ago. And I've got one of the most successful online apparel businesses in South Africa. So Ross and I, when we started this, we're mates. He's a builder. I was a failed art dealer, and we had no idea how to do it. But with endeavor, you can get there. So lesson 1, start. Lesson 2, don't worry if you don't know how to do it. You can learn how to do it. We're all smart enough. I mean, we're good examples, not that smart in being able to do it. And then the third lesson is, and this is a very specific lesson to myself, is around funding. And the funding conversation is always a big barrier. I find it a massive barrier with young entrepreneurs. There's this version out there that there's venture capitalists are not willing to angel investors are not willing to put money into pre-revenue businesses or ideas, and then I can't get working capital. And it bothers me a little bit, because I don't think that the argument for funding in South Africa is defined enough. The first thing I want to say is around funding is, we do not need to think of funding in an American context. We are not looking to start the next Amazon in South Africa. Yes, if you've got dreams to do that, by all means. But Elon Musk has already done 2 of them. Okay, so the likelihood of another South African building another Uber or another, we're reading these business books and it's like, oh, I need 10 million rand so that I've got an 8-month runway to start my helicopter rental app. That's not, we need to stop that. What we need to think about is creating either a commodity or a service that takes minimal funding to feed 1 or 2 people for a period of a year, so that you can get into the point where you are a going concern. And if you take that as the model for funding, your funding requirement goes from being this to being this. And that is a totally different mentality when it comes to starting businesses in South Africa. I say this because that's how we started. The target for Veldskoen shoes, day 1, was to be able to sell 1 pair of shoes a week. Once we got to that, it was 2 a week. Then it was 3 a week. Then it was 30 a month. The funding requirement for Veldskoen Capital grew as it grew and it could afford its own ability to generate funding. So that is the last point, is that for everybody that's in here, and I know business is tough, and I know that working capital, I'm not saying working capital is not nice. Working capital is great, but it's not the thing that you need to start. You can start with less, and it will come as long as your fundamentals are great. And I think those are the four key areas that I've picked up in our journey. And then to end, and I always do this, I say to people, ask for help. And if you don't ask me for help, it's your own fault. nick@veldskoen.com, and my mobile number's on there. I might not be able to give you an hour a week, but we'll find some time. And I have on a weekly basis 20, 30 people that I touch base with on small businesses, small little things. Don't use this, use this, use this, and you just try and short circuit this thing. And do it. Help others get into the conversation around small businesses, and specifically in platforms like this.
Yeah, I have to just say that, I think everything you said is absolutely on point, but I've really found there's such value in communities. As we got going this year, here at the Trust, we started running these small business showcase events. This is kind of like a hybrid one tonight. And I think a lot of people want the thing, but they don't necessarily want to put in the work that's necessary to get the thing. I think it's quite difficult because I'm acutely aware that you guys could be doing anything tonight. But you're here. You've worked the whole day. You've got families, you've got responsibilities, and it's been a long year, but you actually put the time and effort to be here. What's so interesting to me is that whenever we run these free events, we know that tonight was a perfect example. The number of people that are here, double that registered. Now, some people have plausible reasons, like life does happen. I'm not attacking people but every event, we run this big event here called Ignite twice a year. We want to get 250 people. We literally have to register 500. It's 250 people who put their name down every event and just don't pitch. So I often find that people want the thing, but they won't do what's necessary to get the thing. These communities are important. They're so important to have a support structure of other people. It doesn't matter if Nick is selling shoes and you've got a venue. It's just that actually, even though you sell different things, you're most likely going through very similar problems. Because both Nick and I, although in totally different industries, we would have to hire staff. And that's quite a trick. Managing culture, so you could relate there.
Yeah.
Scaling, whether it's you as shoes and us beyond here. And Nick's actually just one perspective. Being in a community with other people where you get these multiple perspectives, most likely every now and then Nick's going to give you what seems on the surface a great piece of advice, but it's not great for your business. That's why being part of a community is actually, and I'm not singling him out, I'm saying using one person. So I think these communities are important. But you guys want to ask some questions? Does anybody have a question? Don't be shy. Thank you. So hold on. What I need from you, please, I'm going to just I'm going to get my microphone off. Someone dropped our microphone today.
Thank you. Hi, Nick. My name is Taryn. Firstly, thank you very much. I think it was very inspirational. I just wanted to ask what was next for Veldskoen. So from my perspective, you've got Plukkies, you've got Veldskoen, you've increased the opportunities for your consumer to wear your product.
Yeah.
So I was just wondering if there was anything else in the pipeline.
Thank you. Yes, we've got a very set plan for the next 3 years. The first part is consolidating South Africa. We want to get into bigger retail. We've just moved into some very exciting retail partnerships, specifically Cape Union Mart, which is the first time we'll have a major national presence. We've got a great partnership with Kaap Agri. So next year in South Africa will be about consolidating the South African business, but aggressively growing in the UK and in the US, specifically around the UK is easier because it's very similar to South Africa. It's retail, it's B2B, all that type of stuff. But in the US, we've got an exciting program in rugby which we're tagging along Major League Rugby and building that out over the next 9 years. And then critically in Plucky, which is our flip-flop. By the way, for the summer, you guys are welcome to buy Pluckies because then you can buy guilt-free, knowing that it's made in Durban, eh? So, like, you can, for the first time, you can wear flip-flops that are made in South Africa. But we've got big plans for Plucky, specifically in the surf space. We're sponsoring, we actually own our own junior surf event, which looks like it's going to be on Easter weekend next year. But yeah, big plans for specifically the States and the UK, but consolidating South Africa as a business.
Hi, thank you again as well. I just wanted to check why your products are made in Durban. I'm originally from there, so I'm like,
Okay, so,
why Durban?
So I love that question because Durban is such a strangeness to me. Firstly, I'd never spent much time in Durban, and we had this podcast, we were interviewing loads of successful people. One of them, the CEO of Billabong, Nordea. The other one is one of the Rand Neuner, the cryptocurrency guy. They are unbelievably successful people from Durban, and they are some of the greatest business stories are from Durban. We make our shoes in Durban because they just so happen to have the best footwear and flip-flop manufacturing partners that we could find in the country. But the strange thing about Durban is it's super, it's a breeding ground for very, very successful South Africans. But it could also be because I heard it the other day, there's a guy from Durban who said, "Oh, come on, guys." He said, "You guys in Europe, you're worried about inflation." He says, "We've been having it." He says, "We've had inflation, we've got civil discourse, we've got our buildings flooding away, and I still know how to turn a profit." And the truth is, I think there's no more resilient a business guy than the guy from Durban. Yeah, or lady.
Hi, everyone. My name is Greg. I'm an entrepreneur.
Hi, Greg.
Hi, Greg.
Nick, well done. You spoke very well. A couple of questions. Are you always going to stay in footwear? Are you going to branch out? Because there are a couple of cool areas that you could go into. The bracelets, the cowhide bracelets.
Yes.
Maybe a celebrity collab. Your own version of Yeezy, maybe?
So we have decided that we would be a footwear with ancillary products brand, similar to Doc Marten, where it is a footwear brand. I don't think we're going to become the Veldskoen puffer jacket business, where I think it's more footwear, but ancillary products, so socks, jewelry would make sense, travel bags, things like that, which add to the Veldskoen lifestyle type thing. And then very excitingly in 2023, we've actually had our first global fashion product launch. We launched a very, very collectible sneaker with DHL, and we launched it at Selfridges this year. And we only did 365 of them. They were launched in Mayfair. It took the world's fashion by storm. It was, in fact, also revealed at Paris Fashion Week. And that forms part of our 2023 and onward program called Veldskoen Volume, which will be very targeted collaborations that not just for the sake of fashion, but they need to do good. So the second one that's live right now is with an American movie star, and her project is called Move Me, and you can see the Ranger boot on our site right now. So it's targeted collaborations that can have a positive impact on the world. But that's that highly collectible sneaker space.
Hi, thanks. My name is Puneet. I just want to know more about the app, Are You Okay? Because that is important for both entrepreneurs and their people around them, isn't it?
Yes.
Yeah.
The app does two things very, very well, and it's two basic things. One, it delivers mental health coursework to those that need it in whatever subject it might be, whether it be grief through COVID, or addiction, or motivation in isolation. So think Udemy for mental health, so it delivers coursework. It's the first thing it does. And the second thing is it puts you in touch with counselors that can help you get through the coursework and also have a chat to them for far less money than the traditional model. And what we've done is we've built it into a subscription model. So if you're a business owner here tonight and you have 10 employees, it would cost you 500 Rand an employee for a year subscription. But not only is it valid for them, it would be valid for 2 of their family members. And just by the way, that's about the cost of a cup of coffee a day. And if you then register the payment with SARS's staff wellness tax, it in fact becomes a free mental health service that you can provide to your staff. So we have set out to try and create a business model where we could give high quality mental health software and services to businesses for free. And we are very close to that right now. It is near to free as we speak. So yeah, check it out. Are you okay? And I don't think there's anything more important than the people working in our team. So it makes absolute sense to give them the tools to help them.
Thanks so much, Nick. My name's Colin.
Hi,
Colin. It sounds like a big part of Veldskoen's success is because of your partnership. I know working with people is not very easy. So how did you guys make that work? And were there any times where it was a bit sketchy? And how did you navigate that?
Yeah, partnering. You have to, and I think Mark will tell you as well. If you partner, you have to partner with people where your values align. I can work with difficult people, but not if their values are not the same as Veldskoen. We are the sort of business where if you're not partnering with us to do good, and you are able to do so in a happy way and in a kind way, then you're going to be our friend all day. But if you can't do that, then we won't partner. The partnering for the sake of partnering is great, but collaborating is way more successful when both parties are fully aligned in whatever mission it is they're undertaking. And we just have a very simple, no arsehole rule. It's just like, we just want to work with cool people, man. And so we try to find them.
Thanks again, Nick. My name is Stephen.
Hi.
Just a question that, we've embarked on a side hustle between 1 and 2 years ago, and it's gone along nicely, and it's at a point where the decision needs to be made at some point. At what point do you pull the pin, and one or both of you step into it full time? What was the deciding factor? I mean, bonds, medical aid, school fees.
Yeah. We were very lucky in that the decision was forced upon both Ross and myself. So, and that's why I don't think I'm probably the best qualified to answer your question, because our transition from what we were doing to Veldskoen was a function of necessity. So we just weren't earning enough money. So our side hustle, which was Veldskoen, just started to earn enough money in our families to get there. And the minute it overtook the other stuff, it was just an automatic, okay, cool, that's where our income is coming. But I have had this question, and I have seen a bunch of other businesses that we talked earlier about you've got to have an appetite for risk. But when it comes to specifically entrepreneurs that have got families and kids and, a nest egg and coming to that point where like the next 15 years are going to matter, I'm a very big proponent of just make sure you get your math right. Really get down into the earnings, really get down into the growth, and then try and figure out what impact you full-time will have on the performance of the business. But you need to be very tight on that. And it's a decision that has to take longer and with far more care and a lot of advice. But so I wouldn't be able to tell you at what point you do it, but my advice would be take it far more seriously than if you were 25 and into it, or if it was not a necessity. Yeah. Shoes.
Oh, thanks so much. You mentioned Dr. Martens, and I have seen your website. You've got a strong sustainability prop, and is that a big opportunity for you in the future in terms of looking at leather and vegan materials?
Sure. So I could go on for the entire night on this concept of sustainability. So there's a couple of fields of sustainability. There's the are your almonds sustainably milked in my frothy cappuccino vibe, and then there's I think what I prefer is the African version of sustainability, and Veldskoen believes this. Sustainability in Africa or Southern Africa means community. It doesn't mean material use. It means best practice that is good for the environment, that feeds and adds value to a community and can help grow that community. So I'll give you a good example of what I mean. We have a tannery where we get leather, Mossips, I think it's the oldest business in the country, and they expel chemicals when they tan the leather. So Ross figured out that the greatest plant in the world for absorbing that and emitting carbon dioxide is a spekboom, which if you go into South Africa is like a weed. And we got 10,000 spekbooms and planted it at the tannery. Now, that's great. So we offset the carbon emissions, but what's cooler than that is that there's now a family growing spekboom for this over and over again. So now it's about the community of it. And we do this along our supply chain the whole way through. When it comes to the conversation about synthetics and vegan leather and leather, it's a complex one because leather is a natural product and actually will compost over time much longer. But a synthetic, there's no such thing as a vegan leather. But there's a lot of greenwashing going around in the material use, and often it just doesn't ever go into the environment. So we like leather because it's a natural product, and because it's a actual off product of the meat industry, which it has to go somewhere. And so we like it for that, but of course it has to be sustainable in terms of anti-cruelty and best practice farming. But you've got to make sure that happens as best to your ability throughout the entire supply chain.
My name's Dwight Rossley.
Yes.
Nick, talking about websites, talk to us about the 5 top dive bars in Cape Town.
The what? The 5?
Top 5 dive bars. I think
The
that's
5
only-
top. Oh no, House of Machines is number 1. You got to get there. And it's a mate of mine that owns it, and it's the most dangerous Negroni in the whole of Cape Town. You'll have one and then another 50, and then unfortunately I haven't been to a bar in about 10 years because my kids simply don't allow for it. But Diaz Tavern's a good one. Pop in there. Oh, is it on our site? Okay, so that's interesting because we're selling South Africa when we sell our shoes abroad. So we're constantly trying to give people really interesting things to do in Cape Town and in South Africa when they visit us. Because remember, we're selling in 30 countries globally now. So we're part of the South African cultural experience. And we have so many people that go to our site and then want to know what to do in Cape Town. We're in fact launching a travel business. We've launched at veldskoentravel.com, which sells travel products into South Africa. So that's where that content comes from, yeah. But I didn't write it. It's probably one of the staff writers. They go there.
I think we're going to call it there purely for time's sake, but I know Nick's going to hang around for at least 2 minutes more.
100%. I'm definitely going to the bar. I'm from the Cape, so I need to try some of this wine.
Nick, I really wanted to say thank you so much for being here. Did you guys have a good time? Did you learn something? Was it great? What I would ask you, just in closing from my end, is I really do believe that, all jokes aside, we need to create more communities around this type of stuff. Very selfishly, I put a lot of these events together because I get to hear the wisdom, the insights, the journey from people like you. I just invite other people along to join me so that, I don't have to I regurgitate all of it. And, we run this event at no cost. And then we filmed all of this. And really, there's no monetary gain that we would get from this content getting out other than we just want to share the love, share the knowledge, share the story. And I would really ask you guys to give us a hand with that. Like, if you enjoyed it, it would mean the world. This content will be out by the beginning of next week. It'll be up on the Suits and Sneakers YouTube channel. And then we just want more people to see it. And I guess not just be inspired, because I think inspiration and motivation is fleeting. It comes and goes. But I definitely do think we need more South African success stories to be shared. I think what I got out of tonight, listening to you, I admire what you've done, Nick, but much more I admire why you're doing it. I think it is important. And again, I think that as South Africans, we can't wait for someone else to fix it. I think that's what active citizenship is about. It's about not waiting for someone else, and it's not about quitting your job, becoming an activist, changing the whole country. It's just about doing the thing that's in your locus of control. And so I already know quite a bit about you guys here that are in the audience, and I know a lot about people watching this because they were actually willing to put the time to either be here or to watch or to listen. And so I'm not worried about convincing everybody. I'm just more concerned about building a community around the people that give a shit. I think it's you guys. So, Nick, from us to you, I want to say thank you so much. I've learned a lot from you both on stage tonight, but also behind the scenes. And I do feel encouraged. I feel encouraged that there are brands, big and small, that give a shit and that do want to see South Africa be better. I moved to London for 2 years, and I had a skewed perspective of what living abroad was like, and I didn't fully realize what we were sitting in at home. Now, I love going back overseas. I love travel. One of the things I realized is that every time I came through passport control, give or take, for the most part, we have the friendliest people in the country. We certainly have the most resilient, because being a South African is a lot like having on your CV a killer sport. Like, to survive in South Africa is quite a thing.
The Hunger Games.
Yeah, but we do have South Africans that give a shit. From the windscreen wipers, the windscreen washer people, all the way through. We have people that give a shit, and we do have some bad apples. But I don't know if that's not in our control. This is in our control. So I want to just say thank you to you for being here, for giving of your time. Nick flew equally all the way from Cape Town to be here tonight, and I hope that this video goes far and wide to a lot of you that came through tonight. I hope, if for nothing else, you leave feeling not just inspired, but like feeling like you're ready to just play your part in whatever it is that you do. And I'm very passionate about small business equally for that exact reason. What you find is that most small businesses, when they do well, and I can speak for us here, we've had a breakout here at the Tryst. We've done 10 times our revenue from last year. We still take home the same amount of money. All that's changed is that now we've got 12 staff instead of 1, and that we've kitted this place out a bit more, that we hire bar staff, that we do things. So you recycle money into the economy far more quickly and far more efficiently. And that's the world that I want to see. And if for nothing else, take Nick's lead in the fact that we should support more small businesses, because it really does go a long way. So thank you so much to you guys being here. There is one last thanks that I have to give.
I also have one last.
Oh, please. Well, then please go for it.
No, just as a token of my thanks to you and to all of you for coming out tonight, please make sure you leave your name at the door and your details, because we're giving away randomly 5 pairs of Veldskoen to the audience tonight. And I don't know how the draw will happen, but it'll be fair.
There's one pair that I wanted to give away straight away. That's to Taryn.
Yeah.
Because whenever you say question time and no one says anything, the first person who's willing to ask a question should get the pair of Fallies.
I love it.
That's it. And
Taryn, thank you. Yeah. And then also, we'll be hanging around, absolutely. Jared, please just stand up there for us, please. Jared is Veldskoen Joburg, and he deals with all of the small businesses in Johannesburg, whether it's staff uniform or branded shoes. If you've got any questions, he's around, and he's got all the contact details, but I'll, of course, be hanging around if you guys want to have a chat.
So I was going to finish off with this point and then say, Nick, parting thought from your end, so you know.
Yeah.
I was going to give it to you. The last thank you that I want to give, genuinely, is to my team. We've had a long year. This is our last event for the year. There are some weeks where we run 4 or 5 events a week, 3 in the evenings. My team's all here. You'll see some of these guys up there. Nick's put your hand up. That's my business partner, Nicola, up there. Corne, Bucks behind. You have no clue what this man goes through, especially when Eskom says you can't have power until just after 6. And so you saw us running around like crazy to try to get all these little things. Bucks, Jonathan who came back, Judy who put the food together. The unfortunate part in my business, especially with events, is that I am the face of that business. People see me on stage, they see me interviewing Nick, and so they tend to think that that business is Mark Sham. But that is not true. There are 12 fuckers who are so switched on, give a shit, work hard, and the truth is that they treat the business like it's theirs. So really, I just want to close off from my end. Please, can we give my team a warm round of applause? So that's it, guys. From us to you, thank you for coming. Please do me a favor. In all the time I've been running Suits and Sneakers events, and it's been about 7 years now, what I've noticed is that people come to these events and they don't mean to, but sometimes, not always, they meet someone that actually becomes quite important in their life later on. And you cannot connect those dots looking forward. You can only go back a few years. So I used to wonder, like, why do we run these events? Does an hour or 2 really make a difference to people's lives? And then over 7 years, I've heard stories like, I came to that one event, I met this guy and he became my future business partner. Or I've always heard these stories, and over 7 years, you hear a lot of them. So what I would like to do is encourage you, please stay. Even if it's just for 2 minutes, have one drink at the bar because you're supporting those small businesses. And then I would love for you to meet just one person that you've never met before. And the whole trick is to not be a networking dick. What that means is you just speak more about the other person than you do yourself. You ask a few more questions than you answer. And you have absolutely no clue who you're going to meet tonight. So now I've taken the weirdness and the awkwardness out of it for you. You can walk up to someone right now and go, hello, who the fuck are you? And Mark told me to do this. And everybody wins here, and you can do it over a beer. God bless you. Please stay. Have a good time. Good night.
Good night. Thank you.